My name's Amanda Rosewarne. I am CEO and co-founder of the CPD Standards Office, and we're delighted to share this morning with you a few technical issues while we got started. That's why I said, are they all in? I'm not sure. But delighted to see you all. We've got a really interesting session this morning on cultivating your brand and elevating it. And our speaker, Barnaby, is absolutely an expert on this, and we're delighted to have him with us. So overall, we're going to run a 30-minute session where Barnaby will deliver his content overall. By all means, use the chat to make comments, suggestions, observations, and questions. And then we will have a formal Q&A after that session. If anybody's got any queries about their membership, about any assessment that's going on, or anything on a customer service level, then our colleague Kirsty is here. So do shoot her a private message and we can pick that up from there. So moving over to Barnaby, very warm welcome to you, Barnaby, founder and owner of the brand Bucket Company. Delighted to have you here again. So I'm going to hand over to you now. For everybody else, this is a CPD for you. This is a session to think about how you are going to move your business forward by looking at branding. So my camera will go off, my sound will go on to mute, and we can then focus on Barnaby. So over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Really appreciate that. Great to see everybody. So I'm going to swap over sharing. So we're going to do this like this, and then hopefully I get this one. And with luck, everybody has appeared. Everybody's appearing. Thumbs up if you can all see. I don't know if you know the thumbs up thing. If you can see my opening slide, if that's looking good. Hopefully you can't see me. It's always one of the benefits of presenting on Zoom, different to being on stage. So morning, everybody. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about, thank you, Christine. Today I'm going to be talking about the synergy of brand and culture. It's often a debate that I come across when I'm working with businesses such as yours. Quick question for you. How many of you are part of corporations? So actually, let me ask a very simple question. How many of you are working on your own or as solopreneurs? If you can do a thumbs up in the chat box at the bottom, if you can see it. If you can't, yeah, thumbs up. So a few of you, great. A few of you are working alone, and the rest of you are in corporates. So what I'll do is I'll try and link the learnings that I have from corporate world to solopreneur world. They're broadly the same. So how we match the synergy of brand and culture is really critical at the moment. So why am I here? Well, I've helped launch over 457 brands worldwide over the last 30 years. I've sat on 17 boards in total. I've started 7 companies. I'm a founder freeman of the Company of Entrepreneurs, a guild in the City of London. I'm a published author. I'm about to publish another book very soon on how to become a go-to brand. I've been a professional speaker over the last 12 years, spoken to over 17,000 businesses globally. I've mentored over 57 business owners. I'm a non-exec director on 3 businesses currently, looking always for more on those. And in my spare time, I'm married to a GP medical director. I have 3 grown-up girls. I'm raising money to build a school in Uganda in the Makuno district for young girls. It's a preschool. And I'm currently developing a proposition for corporates to improve their approach to allyship. I love DIY, and I support Chelsea Football Club for my sins right at this moment in time. Been a bit of a football weekend, not so good for those following football. But so what? You're not interested in that. Nobody's particularly interested in that. And yet what we tend to do as businesses is we often tend to describe what we think our features are, etc., all those sorts of things. So it's always very, very difficult that. actually, we need to be thinking very, very differently right now, because the world is changing. It's facing some real major challenges right now. And with so many ways to connect, why is it that we all feel so much more lonely than we've ever felt before? And I think there's a real issue with this. In spite of all the threads and X's and all the various things that are taking us time away from us to communicate with each other, we've never felt more lonely, particularly as business people, particularly as staff. It's pretty horrendous at the moment. And when I look at that and I look at the success rate of businesses, I get really, really panicked about this, because it's still true today that within 5 years, 81% of businesses do not celebrate their fifth birthday. They go out of business, and there's lots and lots of reasons for that. And as business owners, we really, really need to be doing something quite different to what we've been doing before. And it's going to be even more important, I believe, with AI coming very much at us at a rate of knots. And actually, what's really become apparent to me is the ways of the Industrial Revolution no longer apply. The idea that actually businesses are designed to treat us as factory workers. And it's really post-industrial revolution. They make what they tell us to make. That's what they do in the factories, and then they make us buy what they tell us to buy. And that's kind of a premise that sits behind many, many corporates, even today. Whether it's in the financial sector, whether it's in technology, whether it's in services, whatever, there's still this idea that actually the business owner will make what they're going to make, and then they make us buy that. That can't be right anymore in the information era. It simply can't be right. And we're living in a very, very different world. And what I've seen in my career, we've switched from a marketing perspective from shouting at people through broadcast media, through advertising, through television, through press, into a much more engaged marketplace where actually the control of power, the buying power, sits with us as consumers, us as customers, us as clients, us as users, us as members. Actually the power sits with us. So we have to really think differently as business owners, and we have to adapt to this. It's really critical that we adapt to this, and we adapt right now. And actually there are many drivers for success, but two of the key drivers for success, two of the key drivers are your brand and your culture. And there's also a third one, which I can never not say, and that's we must never forget the cash. Cash is critical for success. No matter what business you're in, you have to follow the cash. And actually, if you look at this recent CB Insights research, the top reasons that startups fail, you'll see that actually cash is number one. It's the number one reason businesses, when they run out of cash, they can be profitable, they can be selling great products, selling great services, but if they run out of cash, they're in trouble and they get the rug pulled from under them very, very quickly. But actually, if you look at the other things, there's perhaps a second reason is people start businesses without doing any proper research. That's a brand issue. There's no market need. They get out-competed. In other words, when they do come to market, they don't really create a differentiated proposition. So they get out-competed. That's a brand issue. They have a flawed business model. Often businesses starting out don't spend enough time working out a really robust business model that drives actually the cash flow more than anything else. There are often regulatory and legal challenges, because that's changing all the time, because unfortunately the people in power probably have never been in business. They probably don't really understand how systems work, and they develop things that just make it very difficult, or the regulations and legal challenges are created by the people who are trying to protect and preserve the integrity of their position in the market. So you only have to look at the FCA and all those sorts of organisations. They're forever changing the rules just to make it as hard as possible for people to do business. There's often pricing and cost issues. They're a brand issue. Now, there's also often the case, particularly when businesses start out, and this becomes more of a problem as businesses grow. Actually, it's less of a problem when they start out, but actually not having the right team is in there in the list. And that's a culture issue. Probably the product might be mistimed when people start thinking about the the gap in the market. By the time they got there, the gap was gone. So that's a brand issue. And actually, that might be down to a poor product as well. Often people don't spend enough time thinking about the product or the service. And then finally, there's disharmony amongst the team, and therefore that floods out into the investor. That's a culture issue. Actually, pivots that have gone bad, in other words, people you've asked the whole workforce to switch direction very quickly, and it just doesn't work. And this is true of mergers and acquisitions. There's still a piece of research floating out there that says that over 80% of mergers and acquisitions provide no additional value to the purchaser. And that's a pivot gone bad. It's disharmony amongst the team. And of course, burned out, lack passion. That's a culture issue. Now, what's more scary is that 35% of female businesses that fail cite burned out or lacking passion as the main reason. They just run out of steam. And that cannot be right in a world where actually we're looking for equity all of the time. And the workforce and the business sector is so much strengthened by women in the business. I've got 3 daughters. I'm very passionate about that. So you can see that aside from cash, really many of the reasons that startups fail, and actually probably in truth businesses fail, is because of 2 core issues: brand and culture. So this is really going to be my view on what we need to be doing from a perspective of both of those. So the first question I often get asked is, okay, great. Is this really, you talking from a corporate perspective? Are you talking from an SME perspective? Are you talking from a micro business perspective? Are you talking from a solopreneur perspective? And I look at the numbers and use those to guide my education on that. And currently, the total business population in the UK is just over 5.5 million. And of those, 4 million have no employees at all. I'm very proud to say that I'm a fully outsourced integrated marketing communications agency. All the work is done by a multiple network of people. I oversee it. I'm the only person in my limited company. I've been going for 13 years very successfully. Actually, I'm one of these no employee businesses. I bring in freelancers. I do whatever it takes for the job at hand, but I don't need the infrastructure. I learned that because I became youngest MD of a top 200 agency in '99. I ran that for 10 years, 17 hours a day working, making no money, and decided to move everything to the cloud back in 2010. So that's 76% of all businesses. There are a further 1.2 million businesses that have less than 9 employees. But actually, when you look at the number of people they employ, it's an average of 3. Now, what that really tells me is there is probably only one person really in charge of 96% of all businesses in the United Kingdom. So it doesn't matter whether you're a corporate or you're an SME or whatever, it really doesn't matter. And actually, if you look at the rest of the numbers, there are only just over 200,000 with 10 to 49 employees, 35,000 companies, or nearly 36,000 companies with between 50 and 250 employees. And scary of all, which always shocks everybody, including MPs that I talk to, only 7,675 businesses in the United Kingdom have 250 or more employees. And actually what they do is they employ 10,000. So there's a huge leap between those because they represent something like 49%. Those 7,675 businesses represent 49% of the workforce. So they really are big employees. And in my career, we've seen the mid-sector completely evaporate, get bought by the big boys, leaving lots of food. Now, the point of this is actually 99.9% of all businesses are small businesses. So actually, they have to think very, very differently about what constitutes brand and what constitutes culture. And I'll talk about those in a little bit. And in my impression, no matter where I go, no matter what kind of business I work with, I'm always finding that the mindsets that sit within inside corporates and the mindsets that sit within SMEs or solopreneurs are broadly the same. Now, the reality is that selling to them is slightly different because they have different information sources, but the way they make decisions is exactly the same. It hasn't changed. And even in the big corporates, it's all down to divisional heads and it cascades down and it gets rubber stamped at senior level often. So it's still very similar to the concept of the SME. So actually, when we're thinking about things like culture, things like brand, we need to be really careful that we don't make the mistake of either creating messaging that only applies to the 7,600 companies. What we should be doing is creating messaging strategies and everything that works for all of us on this call. It's really critical. And today, if you are really, really going to grow your business, if you're going to drive your business, what you've got to do is you've got to become a go-to brand. And that's the subject of another talk. But what I mean by that is actually we as buyers are holding all the keys. We decide when we're going to go into the market, we seek information, and then ultimately we then make a decision to contact people. And there's two quick facts I'll give you here. 88% of all buying decisions start online. And when people contact you for the very first time, they've made 57% of the decision to buy. They're more likely to buy from you than not buy from you when they contact you for the first time. And at that point of first contact is where absolutely culture and brand join forces and become a critical part of being able to develop your business, to sell it. And so therefore they are very, very critical and should work together. So what is your definition of brand? So just in the chat, write down very quickly 1 or 2 word statement, what you think a brand is. This is really to see if anybody's there. I know we live in a world where as speakers, we don't get an audience, we just get names. So just put down in the chat if you can. There should be a little button at the bottom which says chat, just what your definition of brand is. What do you think a brand is? Yeah, thank you very much, Ali. Your identity and what you stand for. Thank you very much. Business identity, fantastic. Thank you very much. The overall way in which you distinguish yourself and your business from Katie there. Thank you. The overall perception of you from others. Okay, thank you very much, Melanie. That's an interesting one. I have often seen brands sit on the balance sheet as part of a valuation. I don't know that whether it could be something external to your organisation. So listen, guys, they're brilliant. Now, the thing is, we're all ostensibly brand owners. We're also owners of our culture. We're a key part of it. What I've discovered is, of course, what you're really referring to is what's called branding. So in other words, what does your logo look like? What your look and feel look like? What your tone of voice is? That's got absolutely nothing to do with brand. That comes from the world of branding. Thank you, Margie. What makes you stand out from others and how you express yourself and want to be viewed. Fantastic. So these are all. That's a great summary of what a branding campaign would be about getting your presence in the market. That is nothing to do with brand. Well, I say nothing to do with it. It's a very, very small part of brand. It's kind of the iconography that sits around a business so that you kind of become recognized. That is not what a brand is. So the first thing I need you to really understand is what a brand is. And we spent 15 years ago, we spent 6 months, actually, so I wish it was 15 years, it's more like 20. We spent 6 months, 35 of us, trying to come up with a definition of brand. So I'm going to give it to you now and try and change your perception of that. And we define brand as every experience that affects the relationship between a product or service and its buyer. So let me just touch on this very briefly. The first thing you need to be clear on is a brand is not something that exists in the minds of people or what people say when you're not in a room or any of those sorts of things. It's not something, it actually is amongst people who are actively engaged contractually with your product. So they bought your product or they're using your service, because only they are the ones that are absolutely getting the full experience of what you are offering. But the critical thing about a brand today is it is a relationship. It's a relationship that people value more than they value the money in their pocket or ultimately in their company bank account. And actually the job of business owners, the job of marketing people, the job of brand owners is we have to portray a sense of relationship, which when people say, actually, I couldn't really afford to create a relationship like that. whether it's with manufacturing, building products, or with a service. I can't afford to do that. So I'm going to give you the money, which is my most valuable asset, because it's a version of my time that I have available. I've converted that into money, and now I'm going to give you that time that it took me to earn the money to you in exchange for something, for a relationship. So it's critical that you understand that every single system and process in your business, from beginning to end, your reception, your warehouse, the packaging, the way you answer emails, the way you answer the phone, the way you dress, the way your staff, everything is part of the experience of your brand. And it is only if you absolutely align those with a core part of your foundational work do you suddenly realize that actually people are buying you for a whole ton of reasons. It isn't your logo, and it isn't the way you look and feel. In fact, that's in a noisy environment that we live in right now is almost pointless, all of that sort of stuff. So a brand is every experience that affects the relationship between a product or service and its buyer. We've been using this for over 20 years. It's like very clever people have come up to us and challenged us. And every time they go, yeah, actually, that's a really good definition of brand. And you can see logos and look and feels and identities and things like that are a very, very tiny part of a relationship. The first thing you really need to do to build this relationship is you have to power your brand up. And you need to do this by creating a story that makes sense to the people in the marketplace. And it's critical that you create this story. And actually, the story has to make sense to the buyers. Thank you, Claire. That's very interesting. Oh, it's a long thing. I can't quite read it, but thank you. And the thing you need to create first and foremost is a value proposition. Now, again, here's another phrase that you may have heard. It's portrayed in many different. I do not mean a highly crafted three sentence statement that you put in a frame, you hang it in your boardroom, and after a while it gets a little twist on it because nobody touches it, and it's slightly at an angle, and nobody reads it. It looks really dusty. And actually, in truth, even if you did read it, you probably wouldn't believe it anyway because it's way too clever for just ordinary folks like you and me. So the truth is, we need to create a value proposition. Now, in our world, we look at that value proposition in a way that actually, when you go networking, when you go and talk to people, when you go and talk to prospects, when you go and talk to your staff, what do you do? And people say, what do you do? Do you have an answer to that? Do you have an answer to that? And I find, now I'm not talking about an elevator pitch. That is something entirely different. That's in this discipline of visions and missions and positioning statements and all those sort of things. They're all a bit of a nonsense, really, actually, because you'll end up saying something that doesn't really work. So what is your answer? And the critical thing is you must say the answer in the right way. Now, I learned this in New York. I went networking in New York, and I'm stood in the Chamber of Commerce in the Bronx. I was anticipating I was going out there to develop my speaker career. I need to tell you, I have never spoken in America. Right, not physically. I've done it virtually, because I'm standing there. I'm suited and booted. The guy comes up to me. He goes, "Hi, I'm Jack Weissmuller. What do you do for me?" And I say, "Oh, I'm Barnaby. I'm a professional speaker." He says, "Oh, great. You know, you're from the UK. That's wonderful. What do you do for me?" I said, "Well, I've got this unique 6-step engagement model called the Brand Bucket, and I teach business owners how to apply that to their businesses." "Oh, okay, great. He said, "But but what do you do?" "Ah, you know what? Forget it." And walked off. Left me standing there, vol au vent in one hand, glass of wine in the other. I had no idea what to do. I'm very, very British, very conservative. I'm not sure I spoke to anybody after that. I was in such a state of shock. But the clue was in the question. And when people ask you what you do, you've got to actually hear the question, what do you do for me? And actually, value propositions are all about what do you do for everybody else. It's really critical. Now, you may have worked out that I've got something to do with buckets. I treat everybody and every business as if it is a bucket. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to fill the bucket with as many people as possible and actually keep them there. I have in my business an F word and a C word, which I'm never allowed to use. So I'll just use it for the purposes. The F word in my world is the word funnel. You see, the problem with the F word, which I won't say again because I have to pay a fine every time I say it, the F word has a hole in the bottom. It has a big hopper bit at the top and then a hole at the bottom. And when you pour prospects in the top, they all pour all out over the floor. And actually that underpins the broadcast mindset, the media owners who want you to spend your money with them, getting loads of people to go into the top of the F word, and they don't mind if it all spills all over the floor because that's not their responsibility. In 1995, a hit team in the advertising world came up with a 6-step engagement model that's shaped like a bucket for Saab to launch the Saab. It's been used for on over 4,000 brands worldwide, many of which you will have heard of. And I bought that methodology in 1999, and I've been using it ever since. So everything in my world is about bucket. You can see buckets behind me, if you can see me at all. Actually, it's all about a bucket. So what we do with a value proposition is we define the inner parts of a bucket. So imagine now you're looking inside a bucket. So I've ticked it, you're looking inside this. And there are really 4 sets of values you need to get your head around. The first set of values you have to define is your behavioral values, your style of doing business. The reality of this is how you differentiate yourself in a complex world, is your style of doing business, because you will all accept that we buy from people we like. The reality is we did some research in 2005 trying to work out what the impact of the internet revolution was, and we discovered a second dimension to that, which is not only do we buy from people we buy from people like us. Not only do we buy from people we buy from people who are like us. So actually it's an imperative that we define what we are like as businesses, our behavioral style. And then what we do is we orientate our communication so that actually people like us find us, and ultimately when they find us, they like us because we're like them. It's all a bit complicated, but go with the flow. But we must define our behavioral style values. The second thing we need to do is we need to actually define what we do, but not in the terms of what you do in features, but what you do in terms of what you give people, the benefits. So this is about creating a storyline around all the benefits of your business, the benefits only. So what do you do? Benefits only. So now we've got behaviors, we've got benefits. What we also do as part of the process is we develop what you want people to believe about you. There's a book here, you probably can't see it, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The second rule, the first rule is be proactive. The second rule is begin with the end in mind. And all communication, all interaction, all connection, whatever you're doing should begin with the end in mind. Whatever conversation you go into, you should have a very clear view of what the outcome of that conversation should be. So we define a set of beliefs that we want people to believe about the business before anybody interacts them. Because actually what's really cool about it is it allows you to create a judgment criteria as to whether the piece of marketing communication or the way your staff are behaving is going to work, because it's set against, when we do that, it end up with that set of beliefs. It's a really useful tool. And the final thing is what do you want to be famous for? What's your differentiating core? A statement that brings together all of the values in the outer ring. So what we do is we fill a bucket like this with all the values, and then what we do is you squash it flat, and it looks like this, and you end up with a working tool which allows you to take all your behavioral values and you put those alongside your benefits, you put them alongside your beliefs and what you want to be famous for. So this is our one. We make marketing work by installing the proven brand bucket methodology at the heart of ambitious businesses so they profit from more sales. And we can do that by being a technician's best friend, empowering a business, being a brand evangelist. We can liberate value propositions which have been trapped by neglect. We can inspire inventiveness. We can make all the business processes engaging, and we can do that in an approachable, common sense, inspirational, purple cow kind of way. And what you can do with a tool like this, with a set of values, is you can mix and match them all over the place, but always try and make them come back to what you want to be famous for. And it's critical that you define these 4 sets of values: behaviors, benefits, beliefs, and what you want to be famous for. They all begin with B. Brand bucket, I have only B at my disposal. I'm called Barnaby. You know what? You can't blame me for that, surely. So it's critical that you understand that you need to create a value proposition, because this is the thing that will underpin your storytelling. You'll have a defined behavioral style. This is your key differentiator, because you probably sell much the same as everybody else. And actually, People will buy your style because you're like them and they like you. Actually, you need to define how people will benefit from you, because that's what creates the buyer engagement, because they're looking to benefit from your product or service. You need to define what people will get from you, because these are the emotional hooks. These are the things that make sure and ensure that people are engaged, not only rationally, but also emotionally. And actually, you need something, how people will remember you, what makes you famous. And that may include your logo or iconography or whatever that you can do. So these are the fundamentals of a value proposition. Everything you need to align your messages across all touch points, so every experience in your business drives this. But actually, you can't do this without support. You see, if you own an office or a factory, go in it when there's no one there. You'll find there is no business. There's nothing going on. And it's critical that we define our culture in alongside the brand. Now, culture is a much bigger question, so I don't tend to ask this question. But actually, my favorite definition is culture refers to the shared values, beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors that characterize an organization and guide the actions of its employees. It guides the actions of its employees. Not only that, it encompasses the overall personality and identity of a company and influences how people within the organization interact with each other, as well as with external stakeholders. And you know who the most important external stakeholder is? The people who buy from you. Otherwise, you haven't got a business. You haven't got a not-for-profit. If you haven't got any beneficiaries, you haven't got any supporters. You haven't got a social enterprise if people don't buy into it. External stakeholders are the people who are buying into your story and ultimately will pay money or give up time for it. Now, what's interesting about that is it sounds particularly familiar, doesn't that? All those definitions. You go, wait, haven't I heard that before somewhere? I think I might have done. Not quite. And then you realise that, of course, brand and culture live in perfect symbiosis. What I mean by that is, if you take brand, then we're talking about defining the behavioral style, creating the benefits, creating the beliefs, getting known for something. That's what constitutes a brand, the commercial entity that is an asset to your business, your brand. But then when you look at culture alongside that, you suddenly realize that they're completely overlaid, because you're defining behavioral style, you're finding the shared values of a community of people, you're finding what really drives their beliefs, and actually you want to create something that is highly valued by the staff, because that's what will make them come to work. Bear in mind that according to Gallup, the amount you are paid comes 11th on the list. 11th on the list, the amount you're paid. And people keep worrying about that. It's why we're actually, when you look at all the strikes and everything going on, you realize that actually all of what happened is the cost of living will go up and there'll be no direct impact on them, performance, productivity of anything, because money comes 11th. It doesn't fix anything. Now, when you look at those two, they're awfully similar. And so what I've learned in my life is actually you can't separate brand and culture. They are effectively one and the same. One is the language of your internal organization. The one is the language of your business in the marketplace. But what's important about for both of those is they are only focused on one thing, and that is the target audience. Your target audience is what your brand and your culture should be working towards, because that's actually what's going to create a successful business. And actually, they are looking for behavioral style to be valued. They want to look for shared values. They're looking for the benefits. They're looking for, oh, wait a minute, jackpot. We've got it. If we bring brand and culture together, the target audience will be more engaged. And actually, suddenly now, when I interact with your business, when I contact it, the people feel like the brand feels like the people, everything's all connected. And do you know what? There are brands all over the world that get this right. You look at Google, you look at Patagonia, you look at Southwest Airlines. If you look at Zappos, that sold after 6 years to Amazon for £900 million, because they got the people and the product and the service and the brand completely 100% aligned, and they become famous for it. We need to do that as organizations. So what are the benefits of a strong brand and culture? Well, in reality, it enables you to feel extraordinarily differentiated in the marketplace, because actually people buy into what you're selling, and then when they come to buy it from you, it's an amazing experience. It does everything they want. They love working with you. It creates competitive advantage. But also, because the people inside the organization love delivering that, they love being part of this success story, actually their positivity just oozes out into the marketplace. And it's very, very exciting. They love working there, and that's really what we should be doing. And what it also does is it then attracts and retains people in the organization. So people in the organization say, I'd never leave here. I can't imagine working anywhere else, can't be as good. And often many of you may have had people who have left and then come back after working somewhere else, because that's a great reflection of how strong your culture is. But it's also other people tell other people and everything in trade. It also fosters innovation and encourages risk-taking and creativity. It aligns people with the business goals to drive organizational success. Actually, it's really, really exciting, all of that. So what you've got to do is you've got to really navigate the challenges that this throws up, because actually big organizations with more than 15 people or whatever, they're really struggling with all of this at the time, because there's always a gap between what the brand people want, what the consultants want, what they're told, and actual culture. So what you've actually got to do is you've got to work really hard as leaders to bring culture and brand as close as possible. And in my world, I use the value proposition that we created for the brand to create something else. And actually, we do that in a particular way. The advantage of this is, of course, if something goes wrong at the brand level in the marketplace, actually, suddenly the culture gets a bit nervous. People don't like work, they don't know what to do. There's crisis management. And actually, if you've aligned them really closely, that very rarely happens. And actually, what you have to do is maintain brand integrity, because it creates the relationships, it drives the relationships, it involves the people, it involves the product. And actually, as the market changes, you're going to have to constantly evolve this and adapt the culture, adapt the brand experience, not the brand story. And the core part of this in my world is the value proposition stays true, but actually what you need to do is adapt the culture, make it change, depend on how people buy from you, what's doing in the market, what the stories are. These are really significant. So what are the 5 strategies for cultivating a cohesive brand culture ecosystems? Well, the first thing we have to do as leaders is we have to lead by example. Now, if you're working on your own, you are perfectly positioned to go into organizations and be the leader from the outset. But the way you behave, the way you drive everything, the way you drive the story, that whatever you're selling into the organization, that will be the example which the organization will follow. If you're part of a team, you have to lead by example. I was at Ogilvy and Mather. We got a memo saying no staff may travel first class anymore to meetings further than 3 hours away. And I went to the first meeting I went to, we all went into standard class, and our MD went into first class. You know what? That wasn't a good thing. That was a memo that went around 400 people. It was pretty shameful. You have to foster values-driven behaviors. You have to foster values-driven behaviors. So in other words, you should start with your values, which I think are inside your brand value proposition. So take those and then create values-driven behaviors aligned with that. You need to ensure that all staff understand the brand values. It's really critical, this. They must understand it. You need to be clear on everyone's role in delivering the brand values. It's all very well just telling people, but if you just let them walk out of the PowerPoint presentation at the end of the day to go back to their real jobs, but you don't really explain to them how they're going to be part of that, you will find nothing will change. It just doesn't change. And you have to stay agile to maintain a strong brand, a strong culture fit. It's really important that. And you've got to keep moving, you've got to keep aware of it, but hold on to your brand value proposition, keep that true, because that's what the market will begin to understand about you, and then just align everything alongside that. So how do you implement all this? Well, you have to involve all key influencers in your organization in creating the value proposition in the first place. This isn't something you create externally that you send off to an agency and they come back 6 weeks later with some great story that they've identified as a hole in the market and blah, 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 and all this sort of thing, and you've got a different color. It's nonsense, right? What you've got to do is you've got to go back to your team and say, what makes us a great organization? What are we getting right? What do we love doing? What do we enjoy? What are we getting wrong? Where can we improve? All of those sorts of things. And your value proposition must emerge from the team of people that you have at any given time. And I appreciate that changes, but at any given time, and you'll find that you're recruiting against that. You need to make everyone an active participant in shaping the brand culture narrative. Don't leave anyone out. You know what? The guy that runs the car park will have met and spoken to everybody who works there. He'll have a much better view of what your organization feels like than anybody else in the business doing a day-to-day job. So make sure everybody's involved. What you've also got to do is you've got to measure all the key metrics to track the impact of brand culture alignment. Now, that takes a little while working out, but you have to measure them. Because if you don't measure them, you won't know whether they're making any difference or not. This isn't just some nebulous ideology that you're going to put in place. This is actually something that's going to drive the energy into the marketplace. And then what you should do is you should celebrate success, but do it small and often. The big, once a year, we've chosen the best member of staff to blah, blah, blah. That means everybody else is a loser, right? Okay, what you've got to do is you've got to go around. You've got to make sure that people get little messages, little gifts, little thank yous at a very personal level, because that's the thing that will make them come back to work for another 6 months when they're underpaid. It's what they will find when the market is tough and customers are giving them a hard time and all of that sort of thing. You've got to celebrate success small enough, and it's really critical. This is a critical part of keeping the culture alive. So to cultivate connections in your business, you've got to start with your brand values. What's the business story that goes into the marketplace? How are you going to differentiate yourself, be amazing in the marketplace? You've got to translate these into a behavioral template in which the people that work with you see themselves. It's not a nebulous kind of booklet that you send out or a PowerPoint presentation. You've got to make people go, oh, I helped create the brand values and I'm therefore part of them, and therefore this is everything that you want to do. You need to lead by example. If you're an individual working in a solopreneur business, you've got to go in and lead by example for everything you do. You've got to dress like you mean it. You've got to have everything sorted. You've got to be better than the organization you work for. And then if you're within a team, you've got to make sure that whatever comes out of your mouth, whatever comes off the PowerPoint presentations, whatever comes out of the evenings out, whatever, you absolutely stick to it by like glue. And then you need to measure and celebrate success all of the time. Little wins, keep them private, just keep the energy going. I think, by all means, have the big show, but absolutely keep that going all the way. Get other members of the team to vote for it. And most important of all, stay agile. AI is going to challenge us all. We have to stay agile. We have to understand what the energy and machinery is that builds commercial relationships, because it's the commercial relationships that people pay for that ultimately will make the difference to your commercial success. I've been Barnaby Wynter of the Brand Bucket Company. I hope you've enjoyed the last half an hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barnaby. Wow, what an amazing session. So insightful, and some really, really good information and stats and statistics for everybody to understand and to think about how to bring brand into life. So I think we've got a couple of questions and comments in the chat. If anybody else has got anything that they would like to ask Barnaby, by all means raise your hand, turn your video on, or just pop a question in the chat.
I see there's, can we have the slides after training? I haven't converted them into a slide deck, but I'm more than happy to do that. It'll take me a couple of days because actually, as you can see, it's all moving images, so I have to kind of decant those out and screen grab them and put them into the slides, but I'm more than happy to send it out, of course.
Okay. So, Claire, you've just made the comment that you've just had, it's been your light bulb moment, and why you continue to work with your coach on a retainer basis. Just interested in exploring that a little bit further. Are you sort of talking about it from a building a business point of view and building a brand point of view, or is there any sort of specific comments or questions that you'd like to ask Barnaby?
Well, Barnaby, first of all, I want to say thank you for such an engaging session. Who knew that you was going to be talking about a solopreneur today? Because I had my solopreneur t-shirt on. So yeah, I'm very proud to be a solopreneur, but I've worked in corporate world. I've got clients who operate in corporate world. So everything resonated with me. But yeah, my light bulb moment was every coach needs a coach, and I would never ask somebody to make an investment in me as their coach if I wasn't prepared to make that investment. And it is money that I pay out every month. It's time that I give every month. And I woke up one morning, as most normal people do, thinking, I need an NLP coach. I'm not an NLP coach, but actually I need somebody to help me with my mindset, my money, my magic. And that is what she does. And that's why I cannot ever imagine her not in my life, because she's helped me grow my business, which has helped me personally and professionally. And her brand is, she is my zero BS best friend. That's what I bought into, because I needed somebody who was very much like me, that could throw a chair in my face if I needed a chair throwing in my face, to give me that kick up the backside, but also to be my biggest supporter and champion cheerleader. So yeah, I can go and speak to her at 2:00 and say, you've clearly got your brand and culture right, because I buy into it every single month when I give you my monthly investment and when I give you my time.
Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I can't condone violence using chairs as
She does it. She does it a rhetorical chair that she throws.
like you, I have 3 mentors. I've had 3 mentors my whole career since I was 6 months into the business. I still have 3 today: one at a personal level, one at a financial level, one at a business level. And, you know, I'm nearer the end of my career than the beginning of it, but I still have mentors, exactly the same thing. Because you're right, actually, you need, if you could be on the receiving, David Ogilvy was famous for saying, if you ever work on a product or a service, you should buy and be a purchaser of that product or service, even if it's not the best in the market, because you will get an insight into exactly how it works. So, you know, for my sins, I've worked in an Argos store and I've sold Ford Sierras and, you know, all those sorts of things. I think immersing yourself in the people side of a way an organization works, and aligning that with your own story, and then keeping everything consistent is really critical. It's really critical. So a great story, and I'm glad. Keep the light bulb glowing, I would say. You know, it's a good one to have come on. So
well, it's interesting because she passed comment on my social media post, and she said, Claire, whenever I see your name, I always see your flame. And I went, yes, that's because I ignite people's potential. So why would I not have my logo? And, you know, when I've got my retainer clients, they actually say, I buy into you. I want you as my coach because you're not the cheapest, you're not the most expensive, but what I get from you is that no nonsense approach, which is really, really valuable and what I need. So yeah, loads of light bulb moments for me today, Barnaby. So thank you very much for sharing.
Very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Barnaby, I've got a more general question, I suppose, which might be putting you on the spot a bit. For that, I apologise. Because our community is mainly made up of coaches, training businesses, solopreneurs, charities, everybody that's trying to educate the world in some way or provide a learning experience. Given that that's what our sort of community do, and they're very much givers, mentors, coaches, speakers, they're all a little bit more often than just the training course that they deliver. What is the top advice that you would give this type of community in terms of building their brand? What are the sort of top 3 things that they should be thinking about?
God, I was going to one top advice. 3 is different. Okay, so I think first of all, the first thing we must all realise is whether you are a solopreneur or a big corporate, from a humanistic point of view, we're all exactly the same. So first thing, don't feel even remotely okay, well, I'm not a big corporate, or you're a big organization and I'm not, or whatever. Actually, your impact on the humanistic side of a brand is exactly the same as, and actually, because you're an expert in your field, then your impact is much greater than any leader in the organization, because anybody who has to do day-to-day work will be diluted in their potency for getting change and behavior change and all that sort of thing. It's just a given. So that's the first thing. So your first belief is you're better than anybody in the organization and what you're going in there to do. Fact. That's a fact, right? Because that's what you do all the. The second thing, and most critical thing I think of all, is you must define your value proposition. It's absolutely critical that you come up with a very clear dimension on what's your behavioral style, what are the real benefits that you're providing the people who are buying from you, what do you really want to change in their belief structure, and a single thing that you want to be famous for. Right? And you must define that, because all the energy that you have is limited. When you're in a big organization, you've got lots of people with lots of energy, but your energy is limited. And so therefore you've got to focus all your energy into driving those 4 things, your behavioral style, because the people who will be engaged and attracted to you will have the same behavioral style, and you'll love working with them and they'll love working with you. So that's you can then inform any piece of communication, whether it's social media like Claire was talking about or whatever, and make that live out the behavioral style, make that live out the benefits, make that live out what you believe or what you want people to believe about you. And as always done in a context which has a famous and a degree of iconography or whatever, or something attached to it. So actually you become famous for that. So first thing is believe you're as good as anyone in the corporate or the organization you work for, and indeed better. Define your value proposition. And then the final thing is make sure you remain agile, you shift, you go where your target market is, and then you create pathways that make them to buy from you. So you're helping them to buy. So you'd say, look, I'm an expert in this field, so you can come to me at any time and ask me a question about how you should apply that particular thinking, that particular approach, and I will give you an answer. You don't have to pay me, you don't have to, I will give you an answer. What happens eventually is over time, people say, do you know what? Every time I need something, I go to this person, they're my go-to, and then you become the go-to for that person. And then the relationship is locked on, ideally forever, unless you mess it up.
Right. That's more than comprehensive answer than I was thinking about. But I think that is a really salient point, in that you can't be overshadowed or feel belittled by the fact that you're not a corporate. If anything else, you've got a USP and a better message to spread, and that's something that we often have in conversations with our providers.
Yeah, and I think when you're developing your value proposition, it's your subject matter expertise that defines you.
Yeah.
That's what your lens on a particular subject. So there's lots of coaches in lots of different areas. They're all seemingly doing the same, but it's your unique lens which go to that content. But that's what differentiates you. And if you present that in a unique style, then people have got everything they need to buy from you. Whether they do is another matter. But
yeah. Okay. Has anybody got any other questions?
Fixed his camera on, but then he disappeared. I don't know what to.
Has anybody got any other questions, or shall we draw the session to a close?
Hi,
Martin.
Hi. Oh, thank you for that. That's an amazing presentation. So,
thank you, Martin.
Could you please finish up by promising that you're going to send these slides to us, please?
Yeah, we're going to do that.
That's how I feel emotionally beholden to it, Martin, as well as rationally. So, yes, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Do you have any specific questions, Martin, that you'd like to sort of bounce around, or anything that you're curious about?
No, I think it's just a very educational and very informative. But I just want those, like a jewel,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I agree.
No problem at all. Well, we've worked with Barnaby for many years, and I can honestly say it's one of the most insightful, helpful, knowledgeable people I know. So if any of you are interested in engaging with him for further brand or marketing promotion support, then I would absolutely recommend that you do that. So hope you don't mind me recommending you there, Barnaby, but
no, I don't.
Very, very good person to lean into and collaborate with in some form or another. So we'll draw the session to a close. Thank you all for your time this morning, taking on the build of CPD for yourselves and joining in this session. Thank you to Barnaby, and we'll look forward to seeing you on next month. So many thanks and have a great Monday.